what I find interesting is, and we've talked about this before, but the demographic of our clients, as advisors is changing. There is, wealth is being passed down, intergenerational wealth. We're talking about a lot, the great wealth transfer, and clients see things differently, don't they? And I know you've talked about this before, but what is changing about what clients are looking for now with an age demographic and lens on it?
So I think, I look at a lot of data around client demand for sustainable investing, and most of the data I see tells me that younger generations are more inclined to want to invest with a sustainable tilt or a sustainable preference. So we were having this conversation earlier about Gen Z, millennials.
Yes, well, let's stop dressing up. It confused us a lot, didn't it? Because we weren't quite sure what everyone was.
But it's correlated. So the youngest are more inclined to have a preference for sustainability and to choose a financial advisor or investment platform based on the sustainability offerings that they offer. So that's clear. But I was pulled up the other day because I was doing something similar, and someone said to me after we finished filming, do you really believe that younger clients are more sustainably minded? And this was a Gen Z. I said, yeah, I do. I've got kids ranging from 15 to 28, and they're all much more aware of sustainability than I was at their age. And that's the way I look at it. So I think the understanding and the preference towards that has definitely changed in my lifetime on a relative basis. And I believe speaking to young people and looking at the data, that young people are more inclined and do have a preference. Now, the sort of pushback on that will be, oh yeah, but when they get older and they've got a mortgage and they've got other things that they're thinking about, will that preference suddenly, die away again? We don't know yet. But I from the data I see, the younger generations coming through are definitely more inclined. And I think we need to look at, what else is happening in the world. So when you look at the way that most brands behave and what they're highlighting in terms of their marketing, a lot of it is around sustainability. If you look at fashion brands now, most of them are talking about sustainability, and they're aiming at that younger generation. They're not aiming at the baby boomers. So those brands are really highlighting sustainability over other aspects of their brand.
Oh, no, I think you're right. It's definitely changing. And I think you gave me a stat once. It was like 95% of sort of Gen Alpha or something were only wanted to invest in sustainable. And I thought, my goodness, that is, and for me, that's really key when you've got a firm of advisors, right? Because a lot of my advisors are quite anti the sustainable investing, as we know. You ask them, do you believe in sustainable investing? They go, no. And it's like, well, okay, well, what's that opinion based on? And it doesn't really seem to be based on much. Of course, performance and cost are always the things that come up. But we're at a risk here, aren't we? If we don't shift our mindsets from an advisor perspective, then how are we going to be servicing our clients in the way that they want to be serviced? Or are we just missing out a whole genre of investments that they would want to be looking at?
I think there's a real risk that even with older clients, if you haven't had the conversation, if you haven't even entered into the conversation, you could be missing an opportunity with any age group. Because in my experience, I've seen people who previously just hadn't thought about it because they hadn't had the time to think about it, or no one had raised it as a topic of conversation, who are actually really passionate about it now. And the only reason they're now passionate about it is because it was introduced to them as an opportunity. So there's a load of data around as well. People who are already invested may have quite significant amounts of money invested and don't believe they've got exposure to a sustainable investment, but they would want to have some exposure to sustainable investment if their advisor had introduced the idea to them. So there's a couple of things here really, Helena. I think it's about professionalism. Like, do you want to do the best? Do you really want to do the best job possible for your client? And if you do, we talk about knowing your client. You really need to understand what their preferences are. And just because, let's say, I'm not that comfortable around sustainable investing because I think it's more expensive, or I think it's more volatile, or I don't think it's going to produce a financial return, that's not a reason not to talk about it to a client, because we also have different ideas around what's enough. What do I want to achieve from my financial return? Am I looking to maximize the financial return, or am I just looking to optimize the financial return? Is it all about making the most money possible, or are there other things that I care about that mean that if I'm not achieving the absolute maximum, and potentially even as someone who's interested in the market and looking at investments and things like that, I don't know what's the best return out there. But if I'm getting a return that meets my financial goal, even if that's slightly less or more volatile than someone else's return, I'm going to be happy if I know it's invested in the way that I'm comfortable with from a sustainability perspective. So I don't know if that makes sense.
No,
but I think
it does, because I was thinking about this, and while you were talking, I was thinking, we've got, and it is about, you don't have to be 100% sure. We are told, we have to talk about sustainable investing. We have to ask our clients that question. And if you're not well versed in it, or you don't believe in it, or you don't, have a solid background in it, a lot of people will just skirt over it. And we're also taught, you have to know your clients. We talk about the emotional intelligence, building relationships, knowing what they want. And if your advisor doesn't raise the question with you, then do you raise it with them or not? Or do you sort of, it becomes quite an awkward conversation. And then, as you said, are you actually doing the best for your client? Quite possibly not.
And if we just let's remove the word sustainability for a moment from the conversation. Yep. Advisors surely want to be relevant and current to their clients when you're having a conversation. So, and I'm gonna use a bit of an analogy here, but just work with me on this.
Okay, let's go for it.
So we're comfortable talking about, coffee, let's say, as an example. And if you look at the price of a cup of coffee today, if I'm getting a cup of coffee from the local barista down the road here in the city, and now I'm paying, if I want one of the fancy milks, so I like an oat flat white.
Okay.
I'm paying £4.80 for that at the moment, I reckon. And some places I'm probably edging even close to £5. I don't think we've quite hit £5 yet. I think there's a psychological barrier to that. But I'm pretty certain a couple of years ago I was paying just over £3, something like that. So there's been this huge increase in coffee, and that's as a result of the price of coffee beans increasing to probably their highest level ever. That is as a result of failed harvests over the last couple of years from Brazil to Vietnam, which are the biggest coffee harvesters in the world. And that is due to crop failure caused by changing weather patterns. So it might be too much rain in the rainy season when the blossom for the coffee bean develops, or it could be that the coffee plants aren't surviving in the same regions as they used to, so plantations are suffering and having to move. But these are all really relevant things, and this is happening to other crops and other areas of life as well. Now, that's all relevant, right? So that impacts our daily sort of what we do. And those things are relevant. So, but it's to do with climate change. It's to do with changing weather patterns, and that will impact on the investment world. That will impact on certain investments in the investment world. So if you're not having these conversations around these elements of things that are changing, and that's a really good way to introduce the issue of sustainability. If you don't want to kind of jump in there and go, do you like sustainable investing? It's like, well, look at the price of coffee today. How much are you paying for your coffee? Do you like coffee? Chocolate's the same. Chocolate, the price of chocolate's really increased, and there's been a real high inflation on that. So these are relevant topics of conversation today, and it points to the way that the world is changing and how sustainability is relevant to everyone, whether you want or have sustainable preferences or not. It's a factor
Yeah.
that should be considered when you're looking at investments.
And it's a conversation that needs to be had. And even if, as an advisor, you don't fully believe in it, or your client may well do, etc., you say. And I think some advisors are a bit fearful of it because they don't have the breadth of knowledge that they think they should, whereas they do about their normal investments. So they can wax lyrical about, the things that they normally deal in. But when it comes to that and a client asks them, they sort of feel on the back foot. So therefore they shy away from the conversation. I think that's quite key. So, and one of the things that people think about is, right, well, I have to be in sustainable investing. And it's like, well, that's very dramatic. You don't have to be. It's not all or nothing, is it? It doesn't have to be all of your investments in it or none of it. It's we can have baby steps. We can start with, we talk about diversification of portfolios all the time. Why aren't people thinking about it from that perspective?
I think that's a really good point. I think that what you could argue is that from what we've seen of late, that sustainable investment has a different or is attached to a different investment cycle. So traditional investments behave in a certain way, and maybe sustainable investments are behaving slightly differently. So taking your idea there about, it's not all or nothing. Could we take a starting point? Let's just use an easy number of 10% of your portfolio, almost as a contrarian position to your traditional approach. Because as we say, sustainability is relevant, or we think sustainability is relevant. So is it worth just considering how the different behaviours? And the only way to find that out, because as we know, it depends when you invest, so your timing in terms of when you invest money into any of these areas. We can start to learn from our own investment experience the difference and what those cycles are. And cycles tend to happen over a longer period of time, so 5 to 10 years. But the best time to sort of start is now. But I think you're absolutely right around it doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I also do sympathise with your earlier point about advisors might feel cautious around an area they're not confident in. But I also really believe that if you're a client of an advisor and you're interested in a particular area, and let's talk about sustainability, I'm interested in sustainability, and your advisor says, look, this is an area that I would like to look into a little bit more on your behalf, because I'm not an expert in this area. I don't claim to be, but I would be really interested to look at this for you. As a client, I think I'd be,
I'd be happy with that. I'd think, great, thank you.
Rather than someone trying to pretend that they know, or
put you off in any way.
Or just say, you don't want to be doing that for whatever reason, when actually you do really want to be doing that. Because you're going to think, if they say you shouldn't be doing that, you'll probably think, because you're already convinced, because you've been confident enough to bring it up to your advisor, you're probably going to be thinking, do they know what they're talking about? And do I really want to be using this advisor? Maybe I should be looking at someone else, looking for another advisor. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the humility that it takes to say, I'm not an expert in that area, but I like, this is what I do. This is what I do, even when I don't know about a particular topic that a client brings up, because you could bring up anything. I will go away and look into it for you. And I'm prepared to do that because I'd be interested to find out a bit more to help you.